Welcome back to another Android Studio tutorial. In today's episode, we are going to learn about how to create a service by extending the IntentService class. So if you extend the IntentService class, you will get a default worker thread. So there is no need to create a separate thread for the service. And if you want to handle a single request at a time, you can extend the IntentService, and if you want to handle multiple requests at the same time, you have to extend the service class. So here I am going to create a simple Android application that will demonstrate how to create a service by extending the IntentService class. So here we have two buttons, the first one for start the service and second one for stop the service. Okay, so now I'm going to create a new service. So right click the package and create a new Java class. I name the class as my service. And extends IntentService. Okay, so here you have to override a single method, implement method. You have to override this method on handle intent. If you extend the IntentService, this is the only method you must implement, on handle intent. There is no need to implement on start command or on bind method, because the IntentService class will provide default implementation for all this method. It will provide default implementation for on bind method with a return type null, and it will provide default implementation for the on start command. Okay, so there is no need to override these methods. The only method you must implement is on handle intent method. Click OK. So here I implement that method on handle intent, and here you need to provide a default constructor for this class. So you have to create a constructor here. Create a constructor. So this is the constructor with a string argument. I remove that string argument. So here you have to call the superclass constructor with the worker thread name. Here you need to provide a name for the worker thread. So if you extend the IntentService class, there is no need to create a separate thread for the service. It will, by default, there is a thread is available, so there is no need to create a separate thread, and this will help us to manage the application, help us to avoid the application not responding error while working with the services. So here I am going to provide a name for the worker thread. I name it as my worker thread. Okay, and within this method on handle indent, here I am going to perform a long running process. For that create a synchronized method with the current object. Okay, so now declare some variables. Int count equal to 0. Start some while loop. And specify a condition here. Count less than 10. Okay, now here I am going to wait the current thread into some milliseconds. So use the wait method and provide some milliseconds. Here I am going to wait this for 50 seconds. So 1500 into 15 seconds. And we have to embed this in a try catch block. So use a try catch block. Also update the value of count by 1, increment value of count by 1, count plus plus. Okay, so now this will sleep the current thread for 15 seconds, and here there is no need to implement a separate thread, because the IntentService class will provide a default background thread. Okay, so now I'm going to override other two methods. So if you extend the IntentService class, there is no need to implement other service lifecycle methods, because the IntentService class will provide default implementation for all these methods. But if you implement any of these method, if you override any of that method, you have to call the superclass method. Okay, so now here I am going to override the onStart command. I override the first method onStart command, so I have to call the superclass version of that method. So here I call the superclass version, and here I print some message toast.make text. Thread is started, sorry, service started. Okay, now specify length for the toast. Don't make it into long, and finally make it visible using show method. Okay, also here I am going to override the onDestroy method. Override the onDestroy method. Here also you have to call the superclass method, and after that here I am going to print a message service stop. Okay, and one more thing, if you extends the IntentService class, there is no need to implement a stop self, because whenever the service finishes its job, the Android system will automatically stop it if you extend the IntentService class. But if you extend the service class, you have to stop the service by implementing a stop self method within the service itself. Okay, but here there is no need to implement the stop self method. Okay, now we finished the coding on the service. Now we have to start the service. So before that we have to add this service into the manifest file. So open the Android manifest.xml file and add a new service element with the name .myService. Okay, and also make the service private for this application by using the Android exported attribute. Make this one into false. Okay, now we have to start the service. So go to the main activity. So if the user click the start service button, this method will invoke. So here we have to start the service. So create an object of indent. I name it as indent equal to new indent, and specify the class name. Here the class name is myService.class. Okay, now we have to start the service. So call the method start service with the indent object. Also you can stop the service before it finish. So here I am going to stop the service by calling the stop service method. Okay, so now we finished all the codings. Now we can test the application. Okay, now here we have the application available on the virtual device. Now I'm going to start the service. Now the service is started. Also you can interact with the application because now the service is running on a background default worker thread, and the main GUI thread is not interact with the service. The service is now running on a separate thread, and after 15 seconds now the service is finished. Also again I start the service. Now I can stop the service before it finishes. Now I stop the service. I hope you understand the concepts about how to create a service by extending the IntentService class. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.